Just to kick off our show right away, I thought we would talk about our women remember, this is March. This is Women's History Month. And we're trying to share with you women in history that are worthy of remembering. And JC, I thought we'd do Elleanor Eldridge today. Why don't you tell everybody about Elleanor Eldridge?
Yeah, she was daughter of a free black man who gained his freedom serving in the Continental Army. And she started businesses, basically cleaning and cooking. And she used that business to begin, the profits from that business to begin acquiring properties. So she was a property owner,
So her
rentals.
Father was a slave, an African slave.
Yes.
Who gained his freedom through the independence.
Right.
And so this is obviously prior to the Emancipation Proclamation.
Correct.
And so his father was actually free before the Emancipation Proclamation.
Her father was, yes.
Yes. So it wasn't the federal government that made people free. Just trying to put us right here on the right time frame here.
She was born free. So free black, which brings up an interesting sort of conundrum with the reparations conversation. Yeah. Right. Does that stop with her? So, so then like, how far do you go back with that?
Right.
If you have reparations, then you knock off some of the payment? You know what I'm saying?
But she was a wealthy entrepreneur.
Yeah. So let's assume, for instance, her father was maybe born here. Probably born here. Mm-hmm. Maybe could have been brought here. I don't know. But let's say his father was brought as a slave.
Right.
Then he was born here. He was a slave, but then was free. Then everybody born after that was not a slave. And this is, in fact, well before the Emancipation Proclamation. So, you go in that line, maybe you're talking one person, two people were slaves in that family line.
Right.
Is there some formula then, taking percentages off of your
what if you were actually
payment?
Your great grandfather was a slave, and then your grandfather was a slave, your father was born free, and you own slaves.
Yeah,
does that sort of undo the reparations thing?
Yeah,
if you're born free, and you actually own slaves?
Yeah, it's interesting because that's probably the history of Michael Johnson, I think was the name, the first
Anthony Johnson,
who was the first, was a black man who owned another black man,
right?
And was the first case in America, I think, under the Virginia court that basically essentially legalized chattel slavery, that you could own someone for life.
Right.
Prior to that, it was, pretty much understood to be an indentured servitude. But
Elleanor,
fascinating little conundrum there. She was born free black, and had these businesses. She was hornswoggled. She was conned and robbed by a banker, and
a local sheriff too.
Yeah, and sheriff had to fight in the courts to gain her property back. So the courts received this suit. Here you have a black lady suing in the court.
White people.
And so if we go by the narrative of, black people were only property, and they were never seen legally as property. So you have property suing the court, receiving a suit. Mm-hmm. And property sued somebody. That's crazy. So here's
what you're trying to say is obviously not the case.
It's not the case.
Elleanor was seen in the court as a person who's not only, and I want to make this clear, in this lawsuit, she is suing a lender and the local sheriff.
Yeah.
And the court, let's just be clear about this, recognizes her as an equal to them.
Correct.
An equal.
Yeah, and so with the threat of the lawsuit, she was able to regain her property back. Mm-hmm. And as you said, this is all before Emancipation Proclamation. This is one of many what I call Black founding fathers and mothers that were successful entrepreneurs, business people, scientists, doctors, lawyers, teachers, professors. I mean, you could go on and on. Many
You
heroes.
mean before Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah. And that's,
And these
I guess
people
it should,
built America.
I guess we should mention, you can find that history at libertyfirstuniversity.com, our More Than Victims presentation about the stolen Black history of America.
Elleanor is actually also in the Forgotten Founders class that I teach, which is a more broad focus of all kinds of forgotten founders, men, women, Black, white, Hispanic.
Yeah, you have a specific presentation. I don't think we've ever filmed it. You've presented to various women's Republican clubs, federated women, and things like that. You have a founding mothers presentation to counter, the misogynistic narrative, and women were weak and under the foot of the men. And there are so many female heroes, that, just like the Black Americans during our founding, that were critical. I think of Mercy Otis Warren. Could we confidently say that America would have taken the same direction, that we'd be here as we are without Mercy Otis Warren? Without
Mercy Otis Warren, without Penelope Barker,
and you can
without Prudence Wright,
so that's your founding mothers presentation that you're going to say.
I get teared up even just thinking about those guys.
We have to film that and put that on libertyfirstuniversity.com. But anytime you guys see that on the calendar when she's presenting, it's amazing, powerful course.
And it's because I love these women so much. But not only that, it really is heart-wrenching to me to know that not only are these women actually avoided in history, they are discredited, they're demeaned by the narrative that they didn't even exist. Not only that they personally exist, but women like them of courage and principle didn't exist. They were all a bunch of victims, right? So that's why I appreciate the opportunity to bring, to have this teaching moment. We need to, you were talking about making posters for schools for Black History Month for your forgotten founders, the Black Americans. We need to do that for the women too, especially now we have this whole March is Women's History Month thing going on.
I thought March was college basketball month.